In this CBT Nugget, we're going to take a look at one of my favorite things, if you can call it a thing, and that's we're going to do an overview of Exchange Online, part of Office 365. And I know you've heard of it. Have you had a chance to sit down and take a look at it? I think you might find this very interesting. I have spent about the last 18 months, most of my time has been spent moving companies to Exchange Online. And in a lot of cases, completely getting rid of their on-premises implementations. Now, I know that may sound strange, at first. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute, this is the cloud stuff, and who trusts that? Well, hang on and give this a second, because this isn't, 6, 7 years ago. This is a completely different story today, and this can offer you a huge advantage, both cost savings, time management savings, disaster recovery savings, high availability savings. It's enormous, and so it is something worthy of your consideration. So why don't we take an overview of this and kind of show you around a little bit and give you an idea of what this is, and then if you choose, you can explore it more deeply. Now look, let's start off this agenda with a few little ground rules, and they're mainly ground rules just for me. And in this case, what I want to point out is that I know it may sound like I'm a cheerleader or even a sales guy for this, and I'm really not. It's that this really does make a huge difference, what we're going to talk about in here, and that's why I think it's worthy of your consideration. Now this is just an overview that we're going to do of both Coexistence and Exchange Online, and kind of show you around a little bit. But this can be a complicated process, especially deployment and migration when you're looking at this. It's something that takes a considerable amount of work. This is difficult to do, and you'll see that there's a lot of components to this. That just because it's difficult, though, doesn't mean that it isn't stable. And so I want you to kind of keep something in mind, is that while this is an overview, if you're interested in this and you want to see like a deep dive on how to pull all this off, that's going to require several additional videos, but I'm willing to do it. So tell you what, if you really kind of get into this, let us all know here at CBT Nuggets, and I'll drill deep in for you. It's not really regarding like the exam prep or anything like that, but I can do that for you. At any rate, here's what we're going to do. I want to take a general look at coexistence, things that Exchange can coexist with. Now we've seen some of that in the last video. Coexistence is also used when we look at migration options from older versions of Exchange. We have other options as well. One of them being Exchange Online, which is part of Office 365. And I just wanted to kind of show it to you for a second, and where you could start to get some information about costs and putting things together if you want to start to take a look at this. And then I want to just talk to you briefly about some of the deployment and migration options that you have that you can do if you decide that you want to take a look at working with Exchange Online. Well, why don't we get started with what is some coexistence that's out there, and then we'll kind of start to break this all down. I know after all of these videos that we've done together, you're looking at this going, oh my God, he's gonna fill the screen again. Don't worry, this will be a nice, simple, and relatively quick picture. I want you to kind of get the idea here of some of the options that you have in addition with Exchange 2013. And first of all, let me kind of go backwards a little bit and call upon your knowledge of Active Directory. And I'm going to kind of draw a brief little Active Directory picture here. And when they do those Active Directory things, they usually draw like triangles to represent a forest. That's like the domains inside of there, and so you could have like little child domains and stuff like that. And you have a whole forest. Well, you know that between two different forests, you could create something called a forest trust, and it could be a two-way forest trust. And by doing that, users over here could be given permissions to resources and back and forth, so that you have access to things across the two forests. And this is commonly done when, let's say your company purchases another company, right? And you're starting to integrate things together. You already have established two separate forests, and now this is a way for you guys to start to work together. Well, Exchange can do this as well. So you can get between two different companies, you can get things like GAL synchronization, and you can even move mailboxes, and all of those features that you would like to be able to have but are usually challenged by because of the separation of a forest. Now with Exchange, and I'm going to kind of change these to Exchange organization circles, we're not going to be using the forest trust, because we usually have the internet between us as well, and it gets much more complicated. Microsoft has a service, and I just want to point this out, referred to as the Microsoft Federation Gateway. So there's a gateway out here, and I'm just going to call it GW. And this gateway is really going to act as a kind of an authentication point, if you want to think of it that way. Or another way to think of it is kind of like a trust broker that's going to be between the different environments. So this is a free cloud-based service that you would integrate with, and you would set up certificates for this. And this is where the connection of when your users authenticate that those credentials and that will be managed through. And so this provides you with the ability to have this federation trust between your two environments. Now, this will then give you the features of being able to do things like GAL synchronization, so you can, synchronize your GALs and move mailboxes, all that kind of stuff. Now, this also gives us another capability, and this is kind of what we're looking at here. You have coexistence with other systems, but you also have coexistence that you could have if you want to use I'm going to label it as Office 365, but the component that we're really talking about here is Exchange Online. And so this same process here of using the Microsoft Federation Gateway, this dude, can allow you to work with Exchange Online and Office 365 and integrate your two environments. Now, something that's kind of interesting when people say this, well, this could get kind of confusing. If I have like on-premise Exchange, on-premises Exchange, and users are, accessing Exchange and getting email, how do they get it to, can I move mailboxes up to Office? Yep, you certainly can move mailboxes up there. And the idea is this, is that mailboxes can be in either location. This is one particular kind of setup called a hybrid, and I'll give you the different types. But mailboxes can be in both locations, or you can start to migrate them all to Office 365 and even get rid of your on-premises entirely if you wanted to. Now, what's interesting about this is that after all of this time we've spent together, the incredible amount of reliance that Exchange has on Active Directory, right? We can't function at all without Active Directory. Well, 365 or Exchange Online has its own Active Directory as well that you would synchronize with. And so you have your own little AD right up here. Azure AD, in fact. And you have all the tools to manage that Active Directory, and you can synchronize that and have these environments operate and integrate together. Now, like I said, that in reality, and I'll give you a couple of side notes on this towards the end, but in reality, this is complicated to get set up. And it is challenging because of all of the different components that have to be put in. You'll hear me talk a little bit later about Active Directory synchronization and the Federation Gateway, all of this stuff here. You might also want to have Active Directory Federation services for single sign-on. And all of this tied together is a series of complexities to get spun up. But I don't want you to think that it's unsurmountable. It is doable. It's just quite a bit of work to do. Now, once this is done, wow, this is actually really cool. You could start to move off into the cloud. And moving off into the cloud, well, that's kind of cool. Let's talk about why you would even want to do that. I get this question all the time. What is Exchange Online really? And what, I don't understand it and Office 365. Well, we're going to talk about that, but here's what it is in a nutshell. Exchange Online is Exchange. It's Exchange that's in the cloud. Now, before you start booing, stop it. Stop booing. Before you boo, let's talk about this for what this is for a second. It's Exchange. And so everything that you rely upon Exchange on premises, you still have. It's just you don't have to take care of a few things. There's a few things that if you use Exchange Online, especially exclusively, that you don't need to have. You don't need to have things like hardware, which means you don't need to do hardware upgrades, which means you remember all that capacity planning that we've been talking about? Most of this course has been about planning of some kind. All of that planning, most of it goes away. You don't need the hardware. You don't need to worry about your disk space. You don't need to worry about putting in hard drives. You don't need to worry about failures. Reason is that Microsoft handles it all. So you don't need to worry about hardware. You don't need to worry about administration and management of all of that. You don't need to worry about your disaster recovery and your high availability. Yeah, all that time we spent, working on designing DAGs and load balance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you don't need to worry about any of this. Why? Because Microsoft takes care of it for you. As a matter of fact, even migrating from previous OSs, like we were showing you the public folder migration in the last video, it can get pretty nasty. It's so much easier if you're migrating it to the public folder system on Exchange Online. It's easier. It's more affordable. It costs less in management. It costs less in hardware. As a matter of fact, at this point, a lot of my friends that are Exchange admins goes, well, now wait a minute here. Sounds to me like you're about to put me out of business. Well, no, I'm not putting you out of business, but I want you to think about a concept, and I just want to emphasize how important this concept is. I want you to ask yourself a question. So I want you to think about your network, and on your network, how many Gmail servers do you have? Yeah, how many Gmail servers do you manage? How much high availability and disaster recovery do you set up for Gmail? In other words, we've already been doing this. We've already been doing it everywhere but with Microsoft Exchange. And if you think about this for a second, wow, it almost becomes ridiculous that we're still doing this on premises. Now, I know this is where I'm starting to sound like a sales guy, all that kind of stuff, but really think about this for a second. Do we really need to have a ton of Exchange engineers in our company? Because we could be spending, those engineers could be spending much more time on more important things for the business if we got all of this stuff with Exchange out of here, just because we don't need it anymore. And I know that there's this issue of, and we spend a lot of time in this course talking about, and I'm never going to be able to spell it, but compliancy. So I'm just going to write compliance. Maybe I got pretty close there, right? Well, just like Exchange 2013 has all of those compliance options that we looked at, so does Exchange Online. So you still get the same kind of compliance features. Now, if you have a situation where your company where you cannot be allowed to store data off of your site, well, then this is not for you. However, under almost every other circumstance, it's something that you want to consider from a new set of fresh eyes, because there's been so much negativity about the cloud, especially over the last 6-7 years, that a lot of people haven't realized that a lot of the things that didn't work 7 years ago work now. And it's changed quite a bit. This is definitely one of my biggest, most favoritist things is Exchange Online, because here's the thing. I use Exchange Online. Most of my friends and other peers use Exchange Online. A lot of their companies have now moved to Exchange Online. I move a lot of companies to Exchange Online. And let me tell you how much time I spend managing Exchange. None. I don't spend any time managing it because there's nothing for me to manage. I'm not kidding. There's nothing for me to manage. Now, I do have an admin that will take care of, if we need a new user with a mailbox, okay. But other than that, there's nothing for me to manage. Once the policies are in place, I've got everything set up, we're done, and I can move on. So what does this look like? Well, this is the interesting part. Microsoft actually tried to make this really simple for you once you're using Exchange Online. So let me just kind of show you. I know I'm sounding like a sales guy. I'm trying to not to be. I'm going to bring up here, I've got Office 365, and let me just kind of give you an Office 365 quick overview. Office 365 is a collection of products, and let me just hit my administrative drop down here. Office 365, you get Exchange, Lync, and SharePoint, plus you also get the Office suite of applications, that kind of stuff. As part of it. So, there's a lot of things for you to consider that you can work with here. Exchange obviously is going to handle our email. If you have Lync on premises, you can connect it up to Lync Online. And there is SharePoint Online as well. So if you're using SharePoint, this is another, SharePoint implementation you can consider, although disk space, you might be, the cost of disk storage in the cloud is not quite caught up yet to where we want it to be, but Microsoft certainly is getting there real quick. Now, Office 365 has this administrative center. By the way, do you notice how this is kind of looking like the graphical Exchange admin screen? That's kind of interesting. And over here, it's got, a basic dashboard and all that kind of stuff, but you can get set up, set up your users and groups. By the way, the Active Directory that you're using here is Azure Active Directory, which you can integrate with and synchronize with if you're in a hybrid environment with Exchange Online. You've got all the configuration settings that you'll need, your licensing, everything that you can handle from here. But let me take you right into Exchange Online. Doom, 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 doom. Hmm. Hmm. Let's see here. Look at the left side here. Recipients, permissions, compliancy management, organization, protection, mail flow. Well, now, wait a minute. This is the same stuff that we have in Exchange 2013. It looks the same, and I'll click on it. It just so happens, oh, look, it is the same. Permissions, I got my admin roles, my user roles, all the stuff that we've been going through in this course. Compliancy management, in place e-discovery and hold, the auditing, DLP, all the data loss prevention stuff that we spent so much time on in here, retention policies and tags, my journaling, my organization settings for sharing and apps, malware, my mail flow, remember the transporter rules, all that kind of stuff. Wow, it's all still here. My mobile setup, my public folders, my unified. You know what, though? You know what's missing? As a matter of fact, let me zoom out here. There is stuff missing from here. I'm going to zoom out here. See, it ends with unified messaging. Wait a minute. There's like a servers thing and a... Yeah, you don't have servers here. You don't manage your servers because they're not yours. That's kind of a cool thing. Microsoft takes care of it. If there's a failure, Microsoft takes care of it. If there's, you don't have to worry about DAGs because Microsoft takes care of it. I like this a lot. Also, when you're looking at the auditing and stuff for here, remember in the auditing, where did we do that? Compliancy management under auditing. Remember how we were talking about the administrator's audit log? Everything the administrator does is audited. Well, yeah, everything you do gets audited. Everything Microsoft does in Exchange Online gets audited. So you can see what they're doing too. So isn't that kind of cool? So it looks and it feels and it configures just like Exchange. So here's the good news for you. If at some point you do decide to go to Exchange Online, at least the management side of it, you're already comfortable with. You're already comfortable with what all the options are, how they work, what they mean, how to plan for them, how to design for them. After going through this course, you actually know more about Exchange Online than most people that are using Exchange Online. I'm not kidding. Now, getting migrated to it, yeah, that's a challenge. But once you're there and once you're set up for it, it's pretty cool. Now, how do you get more information about this? Do you know that you could actually get a free trial? Now, that really sounded like a sales guy, didn't it? No, but I'm serious. You can get a free trial, and it's worth it. You can get a free trial, play with it, even do some test environments. You can even do a test setup where you're doing like a hybrid or something like that between an on-premises, a lab version of on-premises, and yeah, you can. So let me show you. Let me bring up. So I went out and I just did a search on O365 plans, and you can go out there and you can take a look at the business plans to see whether they work for you, your business, that kind of stuff. There is generally, when you look at this, an enormous cost savings and an amazing amount of, well, here, let me just show you. Let's go out to, oh, wait a minute. Let me go. There was a one here. Maybe it's this one that has a nice, quicker, easier view here. Oh, you have all the things that you get. I'm also zoomed in, so let's see. Business class email with 50 gigabytes of email storage. That's not total. That's per user, folks. File storage, all this stuff. You get your Active Directory integration, all of that. So what you would usually be looking for is your Office 365 mid-sized business and larger from here. Part of my screen you can't see because we're all zoomed in where it gets into the bigger scale. Well, as a matter of fact, let me just do this. Let's zoom out. Ink. Oh, wait a minute. It's not on that one. Huh. Well, let's see here. Did I grab the right link? Yeah, let's see. Service plans and descriptions. Plans and descriptions. Well, that's good enough for us to get started with. Oh, here's plans comparison. Oops, I don't want that. That's going to be somebody else's slides. So I was trying to stick. Whoops, I don't want that. I was trying to stick with the Microsoft stuff. Office Microsoft. Here's plan descriptions. There's one of these I was looking at that gives you a really nice view. Oh, here's a nice one. Enterprise, unlimited number of users. So you can take a look at the different enterprise levels and what they offer, and one that most might match your business. And so you can take a look at what those options are, and you can compare the different ones. that they have. So you can make sure that it takes care of everything that you need it to take care of. Now I want you to kind of get with the idea of that here's what you get though with most of these plans when you're looking at it. And let me bring Exchange back up. You're going to get all of the same features pretty much that you have with Exchange 2013. So if you want to do archiving, you get archiving in the cloud. One of the other cool things about this is that you get other kinds of features that we've talked about that maybe will save you even more money. Let me show you. So, remember how we were doing an architecture where we were looking at, protecting Exchange, and we were talking about here's the internet, and your mail was coming in, and you needed to have some kind of edge protection. So you might have some third-party anti-spam and anti-virus stuff out there. Not that I can spell virus, so I'll just write spam. And you needed to have some protection for that. You might also need to have some archiving so that you can, move mail into an archive. We've talked about all of that. Well, here's the thing. Exchange Online has all of these. You've got Exchange Online Protection, which is actually an excellent service. It's been around for a very long time. We used to call it FOPI. Now we're calling it OPI? No, EOP? I'll just call it Exchange Online Protection. You get the online archive. You get all of the stuff that you would expect to have with Exchange 2013 all in Exchange Online. I know. It's like, okay, you shut up now. I get it. Well, just one more thing. Keep this in mind. How many Gmail servers do you have? This is the way that we're moving everything today, simply because it's very much more affordable going forward. It's a huge reduction in cost. So it's just something to keep in mind and something to try out. Now, what kind of migration options and deployment options do you have with Exchange? Matter of fact, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those options. So what deployment migration options do you actually have if you want to take a look at something like Exchange Online? Well, it actually breaks down to being fairly simple in what options that you have. First of all, you can continue to have everything on premises, which basically means you're not using Exchange Online or any cloud services at all. So, and there's no problem with that. Go ahead and stay on premises. I know if you were, doing a migration to Exchange 2013, that's probably what you're migrating to, is a full on-premises kind of thing right now. A lot of companies are. Now, the other option is you could go to just Exchange Online, and we can do this with something called a cutover, and I'll give you a couple of other options. But you can go where you're all Exchange Online. You have no, and let me just put one of these little dun, dun, like a Ghostbusters thing. You have no, I can't believe I just said Ghostbusters. You have no Exchange servers on premises, which that's huge cost savings right there and a huge management savings. But yeah, you have nothing on premises. And then you have what a lot of folks are going through right now is they are going to the cloud, is they are taking a hybrid approach. And a hybrid simply means, and you already guessed it, is that you're a little on premises and you're a little online. So you're split between them. Also, hybrid gives you a couple of other features. Some companies have some compliancy issues where there are certain mailboxes that must always be on-prem. They got to be on-prem. And other ones that it's okay that they're not on-prem. They can be in the cloud, so they could be online and Exchange Online. So a hybrid approach not only is a migration track that a lot of folks are taking today, where they're migrating from on-premises to being up in the cloud. It's also a compliancy option. There's a huge cost savings by doing this and a huge management savings, but you can still handle the compliancy requirements that some things need to be on premises. So a hybrid a deployment or a hybrid approach to this is something that a lot of folks are actually doing right now. Now, this, of course, you'll have GAL synchronization between the two. You have your Active Directory synchronization between the two. And a matter of fact, this is where it'll start getting a little bit tricky. You have additional products that you'll be working with. You'll actually be doing official Active Directory synchronization with the cloud, so AD Sync. And you'll be using, as I had mentioned earlier, Microsoft Federation Gateway, And for single sign-on, you'll also probably you're going to want to set up Active Directory, Federation services, and this all has to get configured and established and set up first before you can start moving mailboxes off. And that's where the challenging piece is. And like I had mentioned, if you want to do a deep dive on this, just let us know and we'll take a look at doing a deep dive for you, going through all of the specifics. Now, there are some other interesting things here with your hybrid approach. How do I get to Exchange Online? Well, there's a couple of ways. This is one of the cool things, okay? This is cool. I get this all the time. Have you run across anybody that still has Exchange 5.5? Believe it or not, I have. Exchange 5.5. At this point, if you have Exchange 5.5, for on-premises, I mean, basically we don't even want to talk to you anymore. Well, here's another kind of cool thing. For Exchange 5.5, Exchange 2000, or GroupWise, maybe you have GroupWise, maybe you have Lotus Notes. You can get to Exchange Online. Yeah, you can. You can actually get to it through through what's called an IMAP migration. So one way to get to Exchange Online, if you have other email systems or really old Microsoft ones, is through an IMAP migration. Now, something else that you can do, and I briefly had mentioned this, you can do what's called a cutover migration. This is where, if you have about 1,000 mailboxes or less, we're flipping you almost immediately right over to Exchange Online. And then those mailboxes get synchronized up, but everybody using Outlook Anywhere will be connecting to Exchange Online virtually overnight is what happens. And so you immediately get flipped up with a cutover. Now, for most people, even if they meet the criteria for doing a cutover, a lot of folks are still going to do, you have a staged migration, but most people are going to do the hybrid migration that we've been talking about here. And that's where they're going to be half and half, and probably for a while. This is going to be a coexistence situation, and it might be for compliancy. It also might be it's just taking a while to migrate over mailboxes. Once you do have everything migrated over, you can get rid of all of your internal or on-prem Exchange. And I want you to keep something in mind. You still have all the same tool sets. As I already showed you have the graphical to manage Exchange with. You'll still have all of your PowerShell. You're just going to do it with Exchange Online instead. You can manage all of the Active Directory, the Azure Active Directory and your local Active Directory attributes, whatever it is that you need to do, you can still do it. So who is doing Exchange Online right now? Whether it's a hybrid approach or if it's doing a complete cutover, well, it's kind of strange. It looks like this. Small. Now, small businesses, and think about this, small business environment, a lot of them coming from, do you remember the Small Business Server Edition? Well, that got replaced with Server Essentials, which basically, when you migrate to it, gives you local file storage and flips everything else off to Office 365, SharePoint, Exchange Online. So small businesses are flipping over to it, and in droves, I might say. And really large businesses are using it. Cost savings is immense. And they're using some sort of hybrid approach. It's this medium size here in the middle. And of course, I'm not tied into Microsoft, so I don't have exact numbers. And they can give better numbers. This is just, as my impressions from the industry as I'm working in it. Medium size are a little bit slower to go. They're still doing a lot of on-premises stuff because they're not quite ready, or they culturally are not ready for cloud-based technologies. And I just want to talk about that for 1 second, and then we'll kind of wrap that up. You might be in a situation where you are totally invested in trying to integrate in probably some sort of hybrid approach to Exchange Online and Office 365. I have a lot of friends that are, but their companies are culturally anti-cloud at the moment. And there may be some valid reasons for it. There may be some valid compliancy reasons for it. But there probably aren't any real technical or security-based reasons for it. And there certainly aren't going to be any uptime reasons, that kind of thing for it. So while it's culturally unsound, you're going to have to just kind of wait that out till everybody starts to get comfortable. Now, you can try to push the message, but I know that that's also difficult to do at times. The fact of the matter is look at the reality of the current situation out there with the cloud technologies, and I think you will find, especially with Exchange Online. The world has changed, and for most companies, they could go to Exchange Online and have no issues, either compliance, security, uptime, any of that stuff, but they will receive a great cost savings. I guess at the end of the day, it's all about this. And if you're saying to yourself, well, wait a minute, you had started, saying something about admins worried about, Exchange admins worried about their jobs. Well, I'm not worried about my job. Trust me, I'm not worried about my job. I don't have to do a lot of the stuff I used to have to do with Exchange. But there's so many other things that I like to work with. I mean, there's Systems Center, there's SharePoint. No, I'm kidding about SharePoint, but there's Systems Center. There's so many products in Systems Center and all this other kind of stuff that I work with that it's okay if I'm not constantly managing Exchange, so it's not a big deal. So was the brief overview a little bit helpful? I know a little salesy, but that's how excited I am about working with Exchange Online. What we talked about is that you can have coexistence with other companies and other, like if you bought a company, you can set up coexistence through the Microsoft Federation Gateway. And oh, by the way, since if you are thinking about doing that anyways, why not consider using that gateway as well for Exchange Online and setting up with Exchange Online, a cloud-based solution that gives you archiving and Exchange Online protection for your anti-spam, antivirus, all of that kind of stuff without all of the hassle, basically, is what it boils down to. And we talked about what some of those migration and deployment options look like, whether you be all on-premise, if you can flip all the way over to being completely on Exchange Online and to being in a hybrid approach, which a lot of companies today are in that, and I'm just going to write that down into that hybrid approach. Both migrating or for compliancy reasons, some up in the cloud, some down locally. It's something to consider. It's definitely the wave of the future, and it's, well, like I said, how many Gmail servers do you have? Well, besides looking at Exchange Online, take a look at it. You can get a free trial subscription to it and make your own decisions on whether you want to dive deeper into Exchange Online. And with that, I hope this video has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.